In just 3 cables time, I will have a fully integrated 2 kilowatt battery system that has a 3000 watt inverter, 180 amp 12 volt output, and will charge at 600 watts every time I turn the key. I am of course talking about the Clayton LPS 3000. It truly does have all of those features and more. It has a 3000 watt inverter within the unit, which is already RCD protected, so you do not need any kind of external consumer units. It has a 600 watt B2B, 600 watt DC-DC charger. So every time you turn the key and start your engine, this will charge at about 600 watts. That is the equivalent to 1.5 Victron Orion Smarts. This unit also has a built-in MPPT solar controller, so this will take about 500 watts of solar. I've had this unit in my van now for a good few months, and I can truly stand by my previous 2 videos where I explained to you why this could be the absolute ultimate when it comes to battery leisure systems in a camper van such as a Volkswagen Transporter. Now, in those 2 previous videos, in one, I break down all of the components that are in a Clayton LPS 2 and I compare it to a conventional Victron system. And in another video, I explain to you guys why this should not be classed as a quintessential power bank. If you did want a bit more of a breakdown of the unit itself, please check out my previous videos, because in this video, we are finally doing an installation breakdown. I'm also going to take a quick look at the supercharger. I'm going to show you guys the pre-crimped Clayton cable kits. So if you do not have the tooling, the inclination, or the ability to crimp larger cables, they sell a kit that is ready to go, and you can basically install one of these things with a socket set. I'm also going to tell you guys how you get 10% off at Transporter HQ. That includes the expansion batteries that are here. That's right, you can make this system, which is currently 160 amp hours, as big as you like. And I'm also going to tell you guys a couple of things that I don't like. This is the backside of the Clayton LPS 3000, and I'm suggesting that if you watch this video from an installation aspect, you're not even going to need to look at the installation instructions, because it's simple. I'm going to try to keep it simple without being patronizing, but it is so simple. This is DC in positive, this is DC in negative. So that is basically your vehicle's battery. So we're going to take a cable from your vehicle's battery, or if it has one of those funky fuse boards like I've just done in a Volkswagen Crafter, where it has spare slots, which is basically like one giant Volkswagen bus bar, then go from that. I'll put a bit of B-roll over the top. That's what I did on a Volkswagen Crafter. But on the Volkswagen Transporter, we are going directly to the battery. Now, straight away, and I will show you this, straight away we're going to put a fuse in there. If you're not using a supercharger, we are going to put a 60 amp fuse in a mega fuse holder right next to the battery, straight away. That same cable is going to go directly into DC in. We are then either going to take your DC in minus, which is your ground. You can either go straight back to your vehicle's battery, following the same route that that positive cable did, which is then earth to ground, or we can scratch up a nice bit of bodywork, make sure it's clean, and we could just ground that right next to the unit. And that's what I'm going to do. The third cable is the key. The key, the ignition, the switch, the remote. Takes me back to my subwoofer days. Anytime you turn the key, this cable needs to become live, and that goes to C1. Now, the reason why I emphasize the key is because there are power supplies in your fuse board that will come on when your engine is running. You want it to be on the key ignition, because if you've got stop start like I have, when that engine cuts out, so will the unit, and you don't want that. It will just play havoc. Find a fuse in your fuse board. I'll show you where mine is on a T6. Do your due diligence and find yours in your vehicle. You need a switched key, and we're going to put one of those little piggyback fuse holders in there. Every time you turn the key, this becomes live. That goes to C1, and that's it. And that is it, short of your 12 volt system. There is more. There is more, and you may say, well, there's more, but you said there's 3 cables. There is more, and I will show you that. But a 12 volt system is a 12 volt system. Everyone's is different. So you've probably got one of these fuse boards somewhere in your van, and you're basically going to go from DC out, negative, to your negative, positive to positive, and that will become live. Your whole system is now live and will charge at 600 watts every time you drive your vehicle or turn the ignition. To recap, DC in is from your vehicle's battery or from the main buzz bar that your vehicle has. Positive from the positive, fuse at the other end, 60 amp fuse. DC negative, that is going to ground. Whether or not you go straight back to the battery or to a ground point is totally up to you. Ignition wire to C1. These DC outs are going to your fuse board, your 12 volt fuse board. Everyone's system's different, but if you've got one of these, it may do you well to put a fuse in between here and there. You do the calculations on what you need. I'm probably going to put, again, a 60 or an 80 between here and there. But this side of the system, everyone's is different. Everyone's is different. Everyone has different needs. But that is basically a full system in a box with 3 cables. Let me show you mine. Now, I didn't want to show you guys the route that I'm taking because that makes it very vehicle specific. But what I will tell you is I decided to remove my whole cargo floor, so the whole rubber mats and all that, because I've never seen what's under there, just in case there was any kind of concerns. And I sound deadened it all at the same time. Now, I have seen people fish these cables under the mat with like those electrical fishing rods. I did this the way I wanted to, hid the cable under the dash, come over the gearbox tunnel. You're never gonna see it. You do it the way you want to do it. This is my DC in connection that will eventually end up at the back of the unit. Hopefully you can see I've got a mega fuse holder down there. That's gonna have a 60 amp fuse in it. I've covered all of my cables with this braided stuff because it looks lovely and it actually protects it. Now what I've done on mine is I've gone through the bulkhead there with a cable gland, make sure it's waterproof, gone through there, through the vehicle, and my cable comes through here, and believe it or not, you can do all of this without removing any of these lower panels. It's hidden up there. It goes through on top of the gearbox tunnel where there are factory wiring. So I've actually used the same channel that they do. I've come across the back and I'm here. I've got far too much at the moment because I don't know exactly where it's going. I also followed the same route into the fuse board, which is just in that panel there. There's my blue wire, and it has the piggyback fuse ready to catch myself an ignition live wire. Ground, I'm basically going to scratch up some of the chassis and install it from the unit straight to the ground, and that is the B2B side of things done. Now, of course, we can charge the unit using 240 volts. You can decide to do that however you please. So if you do have an electric hookup in your van, or a plug socket that becomes live every time you do hook up, plug that in, and every time you do hook up, this will charge. I'm basically going to leave this little fella plugged in, satisfying, in the cupboard next to the unit. So if I ever did have to charge by 240, it is available. But I'm suggesting at 45 amps every time I drive, I don't think I'm ever going to need to charge this. This has lasted me 3-day weekends so many times in the dead of winter with the diesel heater running almost constantly. I've charged it up using this via an extension lead, plugged it in, and it's lasted me without the ability to charge it from my vehicle at any point. This is more than enough, and I'm suggesting that this is pretty much, in my system, transporter, non and void. So you do, on the front of the unit, get a 240 volt outlet, which is RCD protected by this little fella here. So if you plug something into that and it tripped, as we all call it, this would trip out. You don't need any RCD consumer units externally that are going to protect that system. But if that one plug isn't enough for you, because it probably is for me in how I'm going to use it, next to the 230 in, 240, is a 230 out, and they give you a Nutric connector, 3 wires, as in within a 240 cable, the L, the N, the Live neutral earth, just like wiring a plug. Connect that in there. You can go to as many plugs as you like. As many plugs as you like. That is your 240 circuit complete if you want one. I very rarely use 240 in a van. My black van hasn't even got an inverter. So that plug in the front, and once again, I'll probably have one of those little wandering leads where you've got 2 meters of cable and a little plug top. That, for me, is more than enough. But if you wanted one, a full 240 volt circuit to go, just like wiring a plug. Solar, once again, very, very simple. We are going to take the red cable from our solar and we are going to put it into C2. We are going to take the black cable from our solar and we are going to put it into DC in on the negative. That is the solar done. Now, some people may say, hang on, you're supposed to put an isolator in there. Yes, you are. The reason we put an isolator in line is so that if you're working on the unit or for whatever reason you do not want power to go into the unit, you need a way of cutting that feed. If you're working on it and you get solar, you might get yourself a nasty little jolt. All I've done is fitted MC4s just after the unit. So as my cables come down, I've fitted some MC4s. That is the same as an isolator. If you can remove this without tools, which you can just put your hands in there and do that. That is the same as an isolator. Feel free to fit one, but you don't need one. So my solar system consists of 2 wires with some inline MC4s. I'm not concerned about the solar in my setup because I've got one of them flexible panels on my roof. If you saw that, brings me barely nothing in. I am far less concerned about the 80 watts that I may get, which I've never seen, from that flexi panel when I can charge it at 600 watts every time I turn the key. In my transporter, with that yield, doesn't really bother me. Moving on to the remote, and this is where we are going to introduce a couple of the things I do not like. This is very basic. That's not what I don't like. I actually quite like that. It's simply 12 volt on, 240 on, and also has that jump start feature. It's actually relating to the wiring, which I don't like. It's very, very simple. You get these little instructions and this will tell you where you need to take 3 of the 5 wires. It's 5-core cable and they only want you to use 3. There's probably a very, very good reason, but I am here to tell you that you only need yellow, white, and grey, and it's perfectly fine for you to snip those 2 off. I read that 3 or 4 times. What do I do with the other 2? Why have they made it 5-core? It must be 5-core for a reason, and it must be. And it must be 5-core for some other different reason. Move on. Keeping the narrative of the free cable installation, you don't have to have this. This remote does nothing that the front of the unit doesn't give you. You don't need this. The only thing it offers you is potentially a bit of convenience. Where I'm planning to put mine in the long run, I think we're going to be able to see the front of the unit. So I may never have this. I may never need this. This would just be another cable and another dial on display that I don't need. Because in a transporter, if you can reach this, basically you can reach that. So once you know that you are only going to be using 3 cables and you are going to cut 2 of them, it's very, very simple. It tells you pin 1 yellow, pin 2 white, pin 3 grey. And on the ends of there, I don't think my camera's ever going to see that. And on the ends there, they are numbered. Just like it shows in that picture. They're numbered. You are going to need one of them tiny little screwdrivers. The screwdriver that they expect you to use when you're putting batteries in your kids' toys. That kind of thing. I'll just wire this up. While I'm wiring this up, because I don't think my camera's even going to pick it up, let's talk about 10% off. UAO LPS at checkout at Transporter HQ will get you 10% off. And that's including the new expansion batteries, which are like here. By the time I've made this video, I bet you they are already out. Do not hesitate because there are only so many units. If you've been waiting for an expansion battery for the Clayton to come out as soon as you see it revealed on any kind of social media at Transporter HQ, UAO LPS, get on it, because they are going to be gone, snapped up, super quick. There we have it, 3 cables, 1, 2, 3, piece that back together. That just twists in place. Throw the grommet back inside, followed by the plastic shroud. As previously mentioned, without being patronising, that will go in the one that says remote. Now these are a bit of a funny connection. You kind of spin it until it allows you to lock it in, and then turn that. This is our little remote. It's quite sleek. This actually gives you a battery percentage. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, that's the battery status. 230 volts, so you can turn your inverter on. Hopefully you can hear that come on. And the 12 volt usually gives you a nice big click. There you go. So, like I say, bit of convenience, yes. But for me, definitely at the moment, considering I'm day vanning, this little fella, cast aside. This is my earth. I've drilled a hole in the bodywork itself and scratched it up real good. Scratched up way more than I probably need to. And that, as I've mentioned, is the negative, the earth, the ground, and this is our positive on the mains battery. I've left these too long. I think this unit is gonna 90 degrees that way and sit facing over there, but if I can't get what I want in here, it's going to have to go the other side of there. So I've left these too long. I can always cut away, but I can't add, not nicely anyway. These are part of my 12 volt circuit. So from that little fuse board, I'm going to take these that go under there to my diesel heater and up my pillar and to some charge points. I've got a little mini fuse board going in there. I didn't want to keep taking wires over here every time. I've taken some big wires over, and then I can split off as many times as I like, because I'm also building a center console there that's going to have some power supplies in. So we are 1, 2 wires. The ignition wire is in the C1. Let's go and connect that at the other end. Here is my little fuse board. I don't want to get bogged down with the fact that this is a transporter, because you could be installing this in anything. The fuse just above that 7.5, that becomes live every time I turn the ignition. So I've taken the fuse out of that, which was a 10, and it goes in the bottom like that. Your new circuit is the one on the top, and I'm going to insert that back into the place it came from, and that is it. That is now a fused ignition live that will turn the Clayton on, hopefully, every time I turn the key. Yes, lad. That little symbol there, and the charging time. I think this is in about 15-minute increments. 30% in an hour, so it'll probably take about 3 hours from 0. That is now charging. Let me go in here and find out. DC charging, 551 watts, 45 amps in, 3 cables. And if I didn't quite spell it out to you, I'm not using that solar panel on here because my cables come down the wrong side of the van, and I'm not going to cross over my van at the moment for the sake of what that little panel gives me, because I actually have regrets about that flexible panel, if I'm honest. If I went for a hard rigid panel that offered me about 200 watts, you can get crossbars that you fit to the bars that I've already got, maybe I'd think about it. But for that monocrystalline, horrible, flexible thing, no. As promised, this is the Clayton Supercharger, an additional 600 watts of DC-DC charging while you are driving. Now, when I first heard about this product, I assumed it was going to be like an inline unit. So our red wire that's currently going to the back of the LPS, I thought that it would go to this first and then onto the LPS, almost like a booster. when in fact this works alongside the LPS just like a DC-DC charger should. This is basically an additional B2B that you run alongside that red cable. So you would take 2 red cables from your battery, or one really big one like I've done, and then split it at the last minute. One goes to this, one goes to that, and then a few other more wires become apparent, and you will get, believe me, because I've just fitted one, about 1150, 1200 watts while you are driving. The kit also includes these cool little things because the installation is actually on the underside. I didn't know these existed, but that is a 90-degree crimp that kind of goes on there like that, and then you bolt it up. That's pretty cool. And the Clayton wiring kit, the cables that are supposed to go to this, because you can buy a Clayton LPS wiring kit, which is basically exactly what we've done today, or you can buy a Clayton Supercharger wiring kit. And I'm going to show you that now. Here is the Clayton Supercharger wiring kit. It comes with a few fuse holders. I've used one, I've got a couple in the back there. And it comes with all the necessary cables. So basically, if you can read this map here, you are perfectly capable of using these wires to install an LPS and a supercharger. They do just an LPS kit, but this is the LPS and supercharger because I may install the supercharger at some point. It even comes with these 90-degree crimps that I showed you a minute ago. I know picking this up right now that that cable there obviously goes to the supercharger. It is very, very simple, but I couldn't use it. And that is because, and this is something that you're going to have to look out for, the distance after I went from my battery, around the battery housing, into the dashboard, along the dashboard, through the gearbox tunnel, and round and out, it's a 5-meter kit. It doesn't mean that you can just join onto that if you wanted another couple of meters. It's not about the cable, it's about the thickness of that cable. It's a 5-meter kit. So on a 906, for example, or a Crafter, the battery is in the footwell. That's fine. It will get you to a location such as mine in a Volkswagen Crafter, but because I'm going that bit further, and especially if you wanted the Clayton further to the rear of the van, just double check that a 5-meter kit is going to be suitable enough for you. And like I said, it's not just a case of, oh, I'll make it a little bit longer. It's 5 meters for a reason, because that's what the cables are rated to over that distance. So if your route is anything like mine and is at about 7 meters, then you may want to think about going for a bigger cable. This is 35 mil. I got this online. What's good about that is if I ever do decide to fit the supercharger, I know that this cable is going to be capable of taking all of the current that it needs to. So in short, yes, that cable kit is absolutely fantastic and it makes it super duper easy. Just bear in mind, is your unit going to be 5 meters or less after you've done the wiggle jiggle from the point that it's going to get its power supply? If it is, definitely get that, because it's going to save you a hell of a lot of time. Genuinely a fantastic bit of kit. Slightly ashamed it's taken me this long to actually fit it to the van and have it charging while I'm driving, but it's always been enough. I'm getting back from these weekends away and it's on 50%, so I've just been charging it before I leave. But there you go. Any questions, do pop them in the comment section below. If you've got this far and you're not subscribed, please consider in doing so. It does help when I'm reaching out to companies and asking for discount codes for you guys to get money off. Do hit the subscribe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.